Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're coming to you week beginning March 4.
Yep.
And we're talking about the astrology of March 4. We've had a few technical hiccups as we're trying to get this episode up and running for you. So here with my lovely astro buddies, Kelly, Surtees, and Alicia Yusuf. So this is a big week. The big week that we had a little bit of a preview of last year from May to November. Got quite a bit happening, so let's just get it done.
Well, I mean, it is a big week.
It's all squished into a 10-hour period. Like, that's what I can't get over.
Yeah.
So crazy.
What makes this a big week? Tell us more, Cass.
A certain outer planet is changing signs, and depending on, how that might play out for you, it could be really exhilarating or it could be, oh my God, batten down the hatches. So Uranus is moving into Taurus. So this is a mainstay until, 2025 or something like that?
Yeah, 8 years or something.
Yeah, so we had a bit of a preview of that from May to November last year.
I just realised my ephemeris is downstairs. I don't know how I'm going to survive.
Oh, no.
Go get it.
Have you not taken Chris's advice and got strategically placed ephemerae throughout your house?
Oh, actually.
You would have strategically placed lip balms. Go down, Kel.
Lip balms and chapsticks in every room. Good call. I have
All right,
let's stop recording everything.
No.
Should we stop
I've got
recording?
my old one. My old one is here because I haven't finished unpacking. I just got back last night from Australia, and I'm unpacking takes me quite a few days. Everything's all over the living room. But I'm sorry. I was just like, I'll look that up. And then I was like, I can't.
Oh, no. I saw the look on your face. It was like horror, and I knew exactly what it was.
I can't immediately put my hands on the ephemeris. I'm feeling...
So my memory...
So for non-astrologers, this ephemeris is our Bible. And this is why we call ourselves astrology nerds, because it quite literally is numbers. And that helps us understand the placements of the planets, where they're all at, when and where.
Totally. Yeah, 2026, the very early part of 2026 is the last.
Yeah, because we don't really have any major shifts until mid next decade, really. So
when everything shifts, but we are getting a bit ahead of ourselves there.
Just a few years. Hopefully we're still podcasting then.
That would be amazing. We could be mentally, telepathically doing this rather than actually recording it. Who knows what technology will look like.
Yeah. So Uranus, it's the first outer planet. And whenever I think about Uranus is... Because, who doesn't watch Outlander, right? So I know the three of us, we're Outlander fans. And when I watch Outlander, I think Australia wasn't even... a country colonized then.
Yeah.
It wasn't
colonized. Sorry.
Yeah. So, it was still here. Things were still happening, but it wasn't what it is today. So it wasn't even really discovered yet. There was one scene where Claire when they were in France, and she was going to sort of make some reference to the Eiffel Tower, and she's like, that wasn't even built then. And then, of course, Uranus wasn't discovered. And when I am teaching astrology or even sometimes explaining it in session, it's like, imagine what it would have been like when there was a status quo with what you thought about the universe. Then all of a sudden that changes. And how you're really forced to stretch the parameters of what you think you know and what you think is already out there. And so when Uranus is activated natally or via transit in this way, whatever Taurus represents for you in particular is that part of you where you've got to kind of, those, standard keywords, going away from the status quo, et cetera, but there's a part of your life and a part of your chart where you are invited, well, you probably actually aren't invited, you're going to be forced to stretch that kind of parameters of what you think that reality is already, and that's going to probably be pretty uncomfortable just given the nature of Taurus and its already predisposed relationship to change and disruption. So, yeah, I always think about that when I'm watching Outlander for some reason, because it is so, riding horses through the countryside and all that's very Taurian. And Yeah, or sort of Taurus Saggy a bit, but it's all in nature. And then we've got this massive paradigm shift coming up. So, you know, here I am rattling on about it. I feel like I've got so much to say about Uranus, but, you know, think about maybe how in subtle ways maybe, because it was just that little sneak peek preview of how your life shifted and changed between May and November of last year. And that might be like the microcosm of something that's going to be stretched out over the next sort of 7 to 8 years for you.
Yeah, totally. And I actually had a great example in a client session the other day. She in May she's a Taurus rising, so it's around her physical. In May, she had an operation on her back. She's in her late 60s that enabled her now to go and study yoga teacher training. And when I was using your line, Kel, about the bend so you don't break, she said, wow, I'm going to be bending a whole lot now, aren't I? But she's totally reinventing her life. But she wasn't able to until she had that big shift in her health and allowed herself to have that operation. But because before May, she was too scared to do it.
Right.
And she thought that she had to do it with her mental power and her emotional power, and she just felt like, I don't really want to go and have the physical operation because it was quite major surgery. But the fact that really shifted things for her so much that it's opened up this whole thing, and she feels like it's going to be a more authentic life for her to lead. And I was like, can I please use that story? Because that is classic Uranus and Taurus. It's textbook. It really is. So, you know, that's what I really feel is that patterns or things that happen in May and November between May and November that may have opened you up in that area of your life that are now allow you to move forward. You know, for me, it's all around financial. And at that time, I financially separated from a few things in my life and am now more free to do things in my own way. So that's another way that can kind of work out because it's in my second house.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Leash. Yeah, so Uranus is moving into Taurus, I think Wednesday the 6th, Thursday the 7th in Australia, like Wednesday the 6th, Canada and the States, Thursday the 7th, just so everyone has all the details. Yeah, because Uranus was in Taurus from like mid-May to mid-November last year. Look, I'm really excited about it. It's a new 8-year cycle, so it's a longer trend that we're just really going to be settling into. So there's a new energy around innovation and change. You know, the way that you might look to shake up your life is going to be different to the way that you might have wanted to create change in the last 8 years. And not just the way you will make change is different, but the types of things that you want to make change around are totally going to be different. And I was just looking, Cass, because of course you're referencing, you know, some of the periods in Outlander, and that was, you know, Uranus comes to Taurus every 84 years approximately. Yeah. So we have had Uranus in Taurus if you look back in previous historical cycles, and that period from 1768 to 1766 was one of those previous Uranus in Taurus cycles. Yeah. Another one was the middle of the 19th century when we had the gold rush period. So we're sort of getting the digging or the mining, the drilling, which is all Uranus and technology going into the earth, which is Taurus, and getting, you know, the gold out of the earth. But also I suspect there are a lot of innovations around farming practices at that time.
So, that was peak industrial revolution time.
Yeah.
So that was when really actually people were being lifted up out of poverty and people were actually moving away from the farms and moving into the city and really and moving into those places. So they were able to have more access to financial things and more access to money. And then the farms were being worked by machinery, so not as many people were needed. So there actually was a huge shift in population at that time as well, which is that physical, you know, moving from the country to the city, that physical stuff, which is very much Taurus as well.
And you even see that happening in Outlander too, where... not that I'm like up to date on the latest season, but yeah, you could start to see that happening. And I just love it how, you know, you see the astrology in action when you watch different shows, whether they're in the current period or set in a previous period too. So was Australia discovered when Uranus was still in Taurus, or had it moved into Gemini back then?
Well,
77?
There's a lot of
1788.
The 1788 is the date that is often
88,
celebrated as
Yeah.
white settlement coming to Australia, but there is a lot more historical evidence coming through that the Dutch and the Chinese were actually here hundreds of years before.
Yeah.
And of course, the Aboriginal people have been here. Like, Australia's native population are one of the oldest in the world. So yeah, like colonisation, I think, is celebrated, like British colonisation, 1788, but it's obviously it's a bit of a contentious issue. But it was a little bit later, partly because one of the things that Uranus is associated with is these revolutions, and that period in the late 1768 to 1766 is, you know, the countries that really sort of came then, like the US, for instance, that was a you know, part of what was going on in the States then was the revolution against the British king. And that's actually never happened in Australia because we're still a British territory or a British colony. You know, we're part of the Commonwealth. But there was a lot of similar type things happening in France at that time as well. I mean, this is probably giving our listeners a really good taste about the kind of upheaval energy that Uranus in Taurus is really associated with. And everyone's got Taurus somewhere in their chart. So even if you're listening and thinking, I'm not a Taurus, or I don't have, you know, blah, blah in Taurus, you will have at least one set of topics in your life that are ruled by or influenced by the sign of Taurus. And that's what we say, you know, when you look at your chart, Leisha, you were saying money. What Leisha's meaning there is that she's got Uranus on the second house of money, cash flow, and income in her personal chart. So she's basically ready for a revolution in her financial sector. And revolutions always lead to freedom, even if it's a chaotic process. And that's one thing I do try to like share with people around Uranus transits, for instance, is it might be chaotic, but the end goal is to give you more freedom, independence, and autonomy over a particular area of your life. So, yeah.
In particular, in this Taurus sign, it won't be until you're released from that thing that, you know, whatever the Taurus thing is for you, and you go, oh, I didn't realize how badly that was stuck or how stagnant I was in that situation until I was out of it. And when you reflect on it, and that's when you kind of really go, oh, wow, like I am free of something I didn't even know I was stuck in.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, the fact that when it went into Taurus back in May, we had the Mauna Loa volcanoes going off in Hawaii, that really gives such beautiful imagery as to Uranus in Taurus, that real shaking of the earth and things cracking open so it can well up from underneath. So it's not so much this, you know, like when Uranus moved into Aries and Fukushima happened and we have the big uranium explosion, but it's more just the ground moving between our feet and beneath our feet and us having to roll with it. I just keep getting the sense of, you know, in Japan, they've got these buildings now that are earthquake proof because they've actually put them on rollers on the foundation. Wow. So they're able to shift back and forth with the tremors. And I feel like that's in that area of our lives, that's what we need to do. We don't have to, you know, break everything down, but those structures that we've got, if we can make them more flexible, or even like in Hong Kong where they build scaffolding out of bamboo, which bends with the wind, so it doesn't break as easily because it gets really windy there. So that's the kind of way to deal with this Uranus and Taurus energy, because, you know, the earth likes to be structured and it likes to, you know, have that firmness there. But it's just thinking about having those rollers or that band, like you talk about, Kel, to kind of help us sway with what's happening.
Totally. Yeah, and we did a bit of a deep dive discussion on Uranus in Taurus in our live event in Sydney. And I think the recording of that is now available for sale on Cass's website. So that's cassandratyndall.com.au.
.com, no
.com,
AU.
no AU, just .com, cassandratyndall.com. So we can put that link in our show notes.
So did you have any revelations, you know, around your Uranus and Taurus?
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, totally. So the next technical piece is, you know, what specific degrees in Taurus is Uranus activating, and then how might that be triggering your chart? So between May and November 2018, Uranus activated 0, 1, and 2 degrees of Taurus. Now that has, through the aspect pattern relationship, that also triggers the degrees of 0, 1, and 2 in any of the fixed signs. So in Leo, in Scorpio, in Aquarius. I know you guys know that, but I just want to make sure all of our listeners are clear on how we get there. And I have a really important planet in my chart, Jupiter, at 0 Leo. And so it was, that period, there was a lot of upheaval. I was questioning a lot of things about how do I want to live my life, like big picture stuff, from where do I want to live? What do I want my business to look like? How do I want to share astrology with people? Like, so I felt like every level, I felt like I was in a washing machine or being dumped by a wave, where you're just which way's up. And as a result of that, some really exciting decisions were kind of discussed, and things that I couldn't have even planned started to come together, which I'll be saying more about towards the end of March, once everything is fully finalized. So when Uranus comes back into this early part of Taurus this week, if you like me have planets in that very early part of any of the fixed signs, it's like you're moving forward on things that maybe you started in that May to November period in 2018. But this time around in Taurus, Uranus is going to go further. He's going to go all the way up to 6 degrees. So now it's not just the 0, 1, 2 fixed sign crew. And this can be a planet. Like you might be a Gemini, but your Venus might be at 3 Leo. Or you could have your moon at 5 Scorpio, or maybe your ascendant is at 3 Aquarius. It's anything, so anywhere between 0 and 6 degrees of any of those fixed signs. So basically, like for me last year, it was Jupiter. So I was questioning my beliefs. I was questioning, my philosophies about things, what I thought were true. And it was quite there was a really strong introspective component, because I was like, well, if this is true, then this can't be. And if I built certain parts of my life on this one thing that I thought was true, and now I'm realizing maybe I don't agree with it or I don't believe it, how do I need to reshape things, basically? So, one of the big things that came up for me, it's like I said to my husband at the time that I'm like, I can't live in the climate that we live. I can't stay here for last year was also my 10-year anniversary of moving to Ontario, and that's been really exciting and afforded so many opportunities, but I'm like, I just can't do another 10 years with this extreme winter where we live. We're in this weird little weather belt just an hour outside Toronto. And anyway, winter in Canada is just like nothing anywhere else in the world. Maybe Russia, I don't know. But technically, Canada is the coldest planet, according to Lonely Planet. So somehow it's even colder here. So one of the big things was like, I just can't do this. I can do a few more years while we figure out what we're going to do or where we're going to go. But what's our exit plan, basically? So we came up with a plan that we were happy with, and then the universe offered us something else, which is what we're just sort of finalizing all the details on now. But all going well, this will be the last Ontario winter, which I'm very excited about. So we sort of had I hit a bit of the way the Uranus transit worked for me, I hit something that I was like, I'm really stuck on this, and it's a fixed sign transit. So it's that idea of feeling really stuck, or feeling like, how do I change this? And feeling a bit like initially you're caught between a rock and a hard place, where you want to change something, but you can't see how to make it happen. You put a bit of a plan together and you think, okay, yeah, that will work. And then because it's Uranus, there's always a surprise factor. So there's always an element that comes in that is unexpected or out of the blue. Personally, I've had really good experience with Uranus transits in the past, where that out of the blue surprise factor has been very welcome. It's always been, we could never have planned for that if we had tried, but oh my God, how exciting, let's go for it. So I'm hoping that in the weeks to come, as our listeners are dealing with Uranus, you can try and remember a little bit of that. Okay, maybe it's a bit of a shock, but it is exciting. So I know we've talked a lot about Uranus in Taurus, but it is really major news, basically.
It's a huge, It's, we do have other aspects this week, of course, but I think they're going to be somewhat overshadowed by
100%
Uranus coming through. So so second house, third house for you, Kel.
Yep, and Cass, it's
12th house for me. Yeah. So, well, for those listening who are probably a little bit more on the modern spin of things, the 12th house is traditionally more associated with traveling. So last year, I got my passport for the very first time, and I went overseas and spoke at UAC.
Oh my God, and that was after Uranus went into Taurus.
Correct, yeah. So basically, and when Uranus moved into Taurus, my progressed moon moved into Taurus at the exact same time. So within a week, 10 days of that progressed moon moving into Taurus with Uranus, with my other Taurus stuff there, I went to Chicago. So I'd never left Australia before, so that in itself was massive. I left my son.
Yeah.
And that in itself was huge, to think that, like, I'm a Cancerian. I was on the other side of the planet from my child. It was horrible. So I went there, and so at a time where I really just felt like I needed mountains and land and pastures and cows grazing in the fields, I basically stepped out of Chicago airport and into a wall of concrete.
Yeah.
Just the skyline was just massive. The people, as awesome as they were, I'm not talking about the conference, I'm just talking about being out and about in Chicago, was a bit of a paradigm shift. So it probably took me like maybe 24 hours to kind of just like recalibrate. So it was a lot of, shock, I guess, in a way. Jet lag numbed a lot of that. But I certainly had a paradigm shifting experience. Came back to Australia and kind of went, oh, okay, well, what now? Like, it felt like a real sort of, like, this Uranus had cracked open something that I had never experienced before. And to come back to, where I am, as much as I feel, very content, but it was like I don't even feel at home there anymore or here anymore. And so now I'm, basically Uranus will move into Taurus this week, and then in May I'm off to the States again. So it's a continuation, that theme. Instead of kind of doing this crazy whirlwind, massively jet-lagged trip in like 10 days, I'll be in at the States for a month. So I'll be at NORWAC, then hanging out for a bit, then finishing off the trip, doing some work with the San Diego Astrological Society. So it's going to be a lot, taking my Taurus time through the trip. So yeah, does it hit anything in my chart this year? It didn't last time. I don't have anything very early, but I do have my sun at 4 Cancer. So it is going to sextile my sun this year. And then I'll just kind of I'll just kind of remain a little bit like ginger about like all the other stuff it'll touch after that. So it's more about next year for me rather than this year. Well, allegedly.
A bit of both. I love it. So that is just, I guess, a taste to let listeners know of how massive Uranus in Taurus this week. Whether you have a major event this week or you just feel like, the gears are turning or shifting or moving in a different way in your life, that is like a taste of the future, because that changes midweek, and then we've got 8 years of Uranus in Taurus. But there's a couple of other things. Alicia reminded us of one particular thing that's happening this week that Cass and I both overlooked in our excitement of Uranus in Taurus.
Yes, of course. Well, of course we forgot about it. Mercury Retrograde.
Correct. In Pisces.
And it already feels like, this is just...
Already.
This has been the craziest Mercury in Pisces period, because already, even before Mercury got into Pisces, I think it was in the last 5 degrees of Aquarius, and all the astrologers were like, what's happening? Is Mercury already in Pisces and we don't know about it? It's like all these... the things that are associated with Mercury. So we're talking communication, short trips, those kind of things are, computers, technology, can just be thrown in the air. Yeah. Kel, did you want to tell your classic Mercury?
Oh, my God. Yeah, so I had to travel yesterday because I was flying back to Canada from Australia. And it was, because I messaged the girls on our WhatsApp chat, our Water Trio WhatsApp chat. I was like, oh, my God, Mercury and Pisces in full force at LAX, because we landed in LA after our lovely 15-hour flight from Sydney. It's not the longest passenger flight in the world, but it's up there. It's very close to it. It's one of the longest ones. And so you're exhausted. You don't sleep. You leave Sydney in the middle of the day, so it's very, anyway, it's a bit of a gong show. We
You
got
don't
there.
know where you're at.
You don't know. Yeah, you could. It's like a tunnel time warp. Anyway, get to LA. There is a mechanical problem at the baggage carousel where our flight was coming through. I watched the Virgin Australia flights come in. I watched the Delta flights, the United flights. These people were coming in. Their baggage carousel was working. And they were in and out of the thing in like 15 minutes. But ours, we were over an hour getting our bags, which was just so annoying. But what that actually meant is everyone else like myself who were connecting onto other flights, we all missed our connecting flights, because when you land in LA and you're coming in internationally, you've technically crossed an international border and you must put your hands on your bags and move them around to where they need to go. And that's a standard practice. That's not actually just an LA thing. If you cross a border, well, at least coming in and out of North America, you got to grab your bags and move them around. So anyway, missed flights, then you have to get rebooked, then you're taking whatever you can get and you're sitting in crazy places. And so it's a bit frustrating. I do feel this Mercury retrograde. So Mercury retro starts Tuesday in Canada and the States and Wednesday if you're in Australia. Mercury is going to station retrograde at 29 Pisces. Now, not only is Mercury in a dazed, confused and totally fried, potentially overwhelmed state in Pisces, it's square Jupiter, which adds this over-the-top, excessive, like everyone's going to have these, like I've retold the story and I gave you guys totally a Reader's Digest version, because when I was telling my husband in the car coming home, the story went on for 40 minutes, like almost the whole trip home. I'm like, and this happened and then this and these people, and I was totally on a soapbox about it. That's the Mercury square Jupiter and Sag component. So weird things are going to happen and then you're going to be like, you're not going to shut up about them. Exactly.
Yeah.
Get me that megaphone.
And they're going to be bigger. They're going to be bigger than life as well. Yeah, exactly. It's like they're going to just expand things.
Well, and then, you never catch a fish this big, right?
No. The fish is always this big, and then it's this big.
So the thing is with Mercury retrograde is just to be ready to redo things and research things and replay things and re-talk about things. How many times have you told this story, Kel?
Oh, yeah, no, that was like third or fourth go round. I'm not done yet. I'm writing to American Airlines because I had a very specific issue, which is so Mercury and Pisces. I wasn't angry that there was a mechanical problem, because I have flown enough to know that these things are out of everyone's hands and you cannot, I've always said, particularly international flight, but really any flying, it's an act of surrender. You're going into a process. Yes. You're not in control of it. You just go with the flow, through, and you will be cared for and managed and directed. I liken it to when my grandfather used to move the cattle around on his cattle farm. You just move them, you put the thing here, they just go, you're sort of like sheep. You just got to follow along. But the thing that really I got upset about was that I spoke to so many customer service agents, particularly the ones on the ground, while I was dealing with this hullabaloo in LA and then getting on different flights. Nobody showed an ounce of empathy or compassion. Now, I'm not saying they needed to give me a 45-minute therapy session, but a one-sentence acknowledgement of something to do with you must be really tired, or that must be like just a tiny bit of reflective listening honestly would have changed my whole experience. And that's so Mercury and Pisces, isn't it? I just wanted someone to validate this might be tough, and rather than just babble at me with all this technical information, which I actually already knew, So anyway, I'm still banging on about it now. So
you just needed a little bit of that touch of water. I remember coming to UAC, and I flew Cathay Pacific, which is a Singaporean airline, and they were, I think it's Malaysian, Singaporean, I think, Cathay, and the staff on the flight were amazing. Yeah. I got upgraded, so I was like extra amazed. Yes. My first ever international flight, thank you. And then I land in Chicago airport, and I totally hear what you said about, like, what face did you call it? Resting
bitch face. We can say bitch on our podcast. Yeah.
Okay. I knew you'd said it more like
resting bitch.
Resting blank. Yeah, that was one of the
resting blank face.
When I finally got an American Airlines guy who smiled, I was like, you're the first one that smiled at me all day. And he used this phrase, So that's what you got in Chicago, Cass?
Yeah, I just got these like women that were just like it was like they were bouncers in a nightclub or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I'm not in Kansas anymore. Everyone's really angry about the new president. I'll just be like the smiling Aussie getting through the airport. So yeah, and I was just having like these moments of all these movies I'd watched, and and everybody kind of like personified that. So it was just
Yeah. And that's one of those things as well, that Mercury in Pisces just makes us more sensitive as well to any discord, and it really craves that, those kindness, the gentleness, the compassion. So I guess one thing for our listeners to keep in mind is also, if there are snafus and different things happening, try to be compassionate with yourself. Try to be kind with yourself, because that's usually where it starts. So, if you make a mistake or if you have to redo something, know that's what the energy is. Just go, okay, something new, because it's interesting that this is happening right as Uranus and Taurus is happening as well. Like, so it's
this is going to be snafu central.
It's going to be shocks we don't even know are happened yet. So there might even be a bit of a delayed response to some of what's going on, because our brains are not fully tuned in to what is going on because of the Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and then the shock, and then, like earthquakes, there'll probably be tremors or aftershocks post Uranus's entry into Taurus. So I guess like the Mercury in Pisces might be kind of like the bottle of wine that will help take the edge off. Help take the edge off.
Or the yoga and meditation, Cass.
Yeah, I mean, when I was like frustrated in the airport, I went for the chocolate. I will say I had my Whittaker's dark chocolate, peppermint flavoured, that I picked up in Sydney Airport. Thank goodness. A cup of tea and some hot chips, and I was a happy girl. So the yoga and the meditation is obviously good. If you're in Australia, oh my God, just go to the beach. It'll be amazing. Yeah. The beach is always amazing.
Yeah.
But as you're saying that, Leash, it is making me realise that this whole Mercury goes retrograde Tuesday, and then Uranus into Taurus on Wednesday if you're in Canada and the States, and it's Wednesday, Thursday if you're in Australia. So it is going to be this really kind of tricky, confused, intense 24-hour period that is...
And then let's add in the new moon.
And then there's a new moon
next day in conjunct Neptune. So what we're basically saying is book yourself into a Buddhist retreat somewhere in the mountains that will actually let you drink and eat chocolate, and you'll be fine.
I mean, because basically what you're saying there, Leash, is real world practical details are probably going to be unreliable. I don't personally necessarily think the whole of Mercury retrograde. So Mercury goes retrograde, it won't end until the end of the month. So basically, if you think about March as Mercury madness, because Mercury is retrograde from the 5th to the 28th or from the 6th to the 29th. So this is, and because I always think the start of the retrograde or the very end tends to be the trickiest when the planet's in station or not moving. So because this week has Mercury station retro plus Uranus, it's a bit of a higgledy-piggledy, skewy, whiffy, like everything is just a bit topsy-turvy.
It's going to be a dog's breakfast.
To throw out a classic Aussie perler. Dog's breakfast.
Well, I was even thinking it's like a walk through a magical forest. You never know what kind of mythical creature is going to come out. There's this weird, elusive feeling of almost like you're in the dream state, actually. You know those dreams you have that feel so vivid, and you're looking at it and go, that actually isn't physically possible, but I just saw it happen.
Correct.
That's potentially what the energy of this week could be about. And maybe it will be like, oh, am I dreaming that? Is that real? Did that actually happen? Conversations you might have that you totally forgot about. So this is definitely a day a week to rely on your diary, rely on your calendar, write things down, because things will get hazed and misconfused.
I love it. That's a great word for this week. Miscommunication and confusion all together.
Or a dog's breakfast.
A dog's breakfast.
But just making sure that things are clear. And if something doesn't seem right this week, maybe hold off. Some things may seem too good to be true this week as well, because Jupiter is in that mix too. So just maybe hold off on grabbing hold of things, because they may actually turn out to be phantom or magical and not actually real.
Yeah.
Cool.
This would be, I think the only thing I just wanted to throw in there just to summarize or just to kind of reflect, the one thing, Leash, is this is definitely a good week to delay things if you can.
Yeah.
But Cass, this has been like a bumper episode, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just kind of, I'm being Saturn about this episode.
Totally.
Which is not like me. But, part of our podcast ethos is to keep it a little bit on the shorter side.
Yes.
But, I mean, this is a fairly major thing to be discussing. So, it's definitely going to be a bit of a wild week, that's for sure. And I was just sort of thinking, Uranus is moving into Taurus while Venus is just fresh in Aquarius. So there's just that other level of, rigidity perhaps, whatever you're wanting to really hold on to is kind of, pry it from a cold hand, dead hands kind of thing about it.
You're bringing out some clangers today, Cass.
Yeah, you really are.
Well, I feel like there's a few people, that I met at UAC and what have you. They message me every now and then and they want me to keep them abreast of some of our colloquial language. And I guess I'm just throwing it out there right now because I'm so Mercury retrograded up already that I can't really translate a more universal type of language right now. So I'm just defaulting into my native tongue. Well, she'll be apples is a good one for this week too. Right. She'll be right, mate.
Oh my God, nobody's going to understand this if they're not Australian.
Cool bananas.
Oh my God, on this note, I feel like we need to end before we divert any more into Australian.
And in next week's episode, we will discuss some more Australian language with you while Mercury actually is retrograde. So
if either of you girls got...
take down your pen or get your notes out and...
Oh my God. So either of you guys got anything to announce this week or should we just end it there?
I will announce that my next online class, which is a 4-part class on career astrology. So basically looking to answer the question of what should I do with my life. It's a 4-part class. The initial training will be delivered in 5 live video classes, Monday nights in Canada and the States, Tuesday kind of mid-morning if you're in Australia. That starts the last week of March, the 25th of March. So I'm taking a risk and starting it just before the end of Mercury retrograde, but sometimes you've got to work with things where you can.
You just got to play with fire.
Well, you got to do the best you can, right? Venus will be in Pisces by then. So
there are a few sextiles to Capricorn,
There are. So, so if you're interested, the info for that is on the homepage of my website, kellysastrology.com. Right. What about you guys?
How about you, Lishi? What are you doing?
Well, I'm calling it. My new website will be up.
I will.
And I'm doing it before Mercury goes retrograde, but I will.
Honestly, you're going to have to redo it because we always have to redo websites, so that's no problem.
Well, this is my third website as an astrologer, so I figure I am redoing it. So that's the way I'm looking at it. But I am having a sale to celebrate. So I'm having a sale on my natal chart consults and my transit consults. So pop over to aliciayusuf.com to book in if you want to.
Fantastic.
And I'll have my new moon group going this week. I haven't put it up yet, so I don't know. Yeah, I'm assuming it will be sold out because we're going to the beach to do it. But if just, pop on to Alicia Yusuf at Facebook to be able to book in or see if there's any spaces left.
Fantastic.
Excellent. And what about you, Cass?
Me? Well, I will be probably just putting the final touches on a writing project I'm just winding up, plus seeing clients. I've opened this week for clients before I then knuckle down and do the next big writing project. So that is me. I'm just drowning in an ocean of words, Mercury and Pisces.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's my 10th house, so it makes sense.
It makes sense.
That's me. I feel like that Kermit gif, where he's just slamming down on the keyboard. If anybody's seen that.
I love it. That's brilliant.
I've had a few people send that to me. How's your writing going? And then sending that to me. So that's this week, guys. It's been fairly extensive episode for the Water Trio, but there's been it's worth it. It's a big week, bit of a once-in-a-lifetime stuff. So until next week, that's over and out for us. So thanks for joining us.
Bye. Everyone.